Hello, I'm Christine Niles, host of Forward Boldly Radio, and in collaboration with Regina Magazine, I'm bringing you a short conversation with the co-founder of the website conversationwithwomen.org, Emily Borman. The other founder is Mary Claire Murray. Conversationwithwomen.org is a unique website for Catholic women in that it contains the personal stories, all submitted anonymously, of women who have endured painful trials, whether through having gone through divorce, had abortions, or suffered harm from pornography. And they also contain stories from women on topics like modesty, marriage, raising children, and things like that. Here's an excerpt from one of the posts titled, Dreaming of My Daughter.
After meeting and dating for 4 years, an exceptionally kind man who respected my intelligence and independence, I married happily, looking forward to a life filled with blessings. He was not ready to have children, and I had another 4 years of waiting. We ended up blessed with 3 boys. But somewhere along the way, I was overcome by a Great Depression. I had visions of a beautiful little girl coming to me in my mind's eye. I knew I was meant to have a baby girl. She was going to be talented, maybe an actress, a dancer, a singer, or a writer. I yearned for her with excruciating pain. My desire for her to arrive was filled with angst and frustration. I sought out other women in my church to find solace and intimacy. In a life filled with diapers and talk of babies, my faith began to grow. I attended a cursillo, a weekend retreat of faith, talks, confession, and Mass. It was there that the Holy Spirit revealed to me the true source of my pain, an unresolved death. I had killed my baby girl 17 years earlier, and she had been coming to me all these years to reveal her existence. She wanted me to know that I only needed to seek her out, come to know her, and I would be forgiven and peace would finally be granted to me. But first, I was to undergo the deepest despair and depression I have ever experienced.
Okay, so Emily, great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Christine, for inviting me.
Now, we've just heard a short clip from one of the stories posted on your website from a woman who grappled with her abortion and eventually found healing and forgiveness in the church. And there are other powerful testimonies on there as well. This is not your typical Catholic women's website, where women talk about the cute outfit they wear to Mass or what their homeschooling curriculum will be, or, a place to post photos of like craft projects you've done at home with your kids. This is a website with very powerful, very raw, personal stories of women, some of who have, been through pretty painful things like divorce or suffered from pornography or, like in this excerpt, abortion. And of course, there are lighter posts as well. But, it must have taken a certain amount of courage or inspiration to get this website up and running. So what was it that inspired you to create this website? What is it all about, and what is it that you hope to achieve with it?
Well, my own conversion came about partially due to an intimate conversation between girlfriends. And I've long been very grateful for that conversation and wondered how could I help facilitate or encourage those conversations for others. And I stumbled upon I was visiting a church and stumbled upon a column in their church bulletin entitled Conversation with Women. And it was exactly what I had been looking for. It was brilliant. A group of women had put together this column and solicited stories from parishioners and were publishing them anonymously in their bulletin. And so I approached them, and there were 3 women, and one of them, they all agreed to allow me to make a website out of it, and one of them continued with me and works with me on the website today.
Okay, so can you give us a sample of some of the more memorable stories that are posted there?
Oh, they are all great stories. It's hard to choose. There's, healing from abortion, recovering from pornography, struggles and joys of NFP in large families, infertility, adoption. There's so many. One of my favorites is entitled My Difficult Marriage and How It's Actually Pretty Wonderful. And it's a funny story. It's a realistic story. But basically a woman talks about how she got married and she really thought she had the best marriage she knew of. And she eventually comes into a rough patch in the marriage, and she describes her realization that it's love gets you through the rough patches, but it doesn't fix them. It doesn't make everybody perfect and fix the problems. It gets you through the rough patches, and nothing's ever going to be perfect because we're all broken. And that, just that she turns to Christ in all of this, and what she isn't getting out of her marriage, she gets from Christ, and that it really is a good life and a good marriage after all. Sometimes the way, television and the movies portray love and marriage and our society now, that, if you're not happy, you leave. And she just does this wonderful job of explaining that no, you work through it. And this is how we all get to heaven. Another one, I think our most recent story is called The Pill for Medical Reasons, and that slippery slope. And she explains how she started on the pill for medical reasons, which was explained to her was morally acceptable, but how being on the pill for medical reasons allowed her to slip into premarital sex. It's not like she didn't realize it, but it just made it so much easier for her to slip in moral ways. And also how being on the pill actually disguised some of the symptoms and the diagnosis of a medical problem she really was having. Wow. So it's acceptable, but is it a good idea?
Right. So many women have come under the lie. I mean, so many women they've grown up knowing nothing more than use of the pill, and they don't realize the harms that it causes. Yeah. And not just physically, there are all sorts of physical harms, but emotionally, of course, the worst. Yeah. Spiritually.
Another one of my favorites is called We Contracepted, I Was Ignorant. And it's about a woman who got married, and neither she or her spouse were very well catechized, and they contracepted. And she became discontented in the marriage, and around the same time became aware of the church's teachings on contraception. And it really was a surprise to her, even though she was a cradle Catholic. And she ended up, even though she was aware of the teachings, she thought it was too hard or too difficult. She couldn't do it. And then she ended up listening to Janet Smith's CD, Contraception, Why Not? Really, only the way she describes it, it's almost as though she did it just to keep her friend from bothering her anymore. But she listened to it, and she completely changed her mind in a 30-minute CD and stopped contracepting. Wow. And I wrote down the last line of that story because I like it so much. She said, "Living my Catholic faith can be a struggle at times, but it's a joyful struggle. And I'd choose this joyful struggle over my previous ignorant misery any day and every day."
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. And it also shows the importance of Catholics being out there speaking the truth, whether through online media, like what you and I are doing, or just with your neighbor or your family or friends. A lot of these people, they just don't know. And all it takes, and they're open, they're just misguided, and they just don't know, and they haven't heard, and then they come across something like your friend, not your friend, but this author, hearing Janet Smith, and her eyes being opened, and then making this life-changing decision for the better.
It must be a wonderful CD, because in the comment section, another woman commented saying that the same thing had happened to her with the same CD.
Wow, yeah. That also highlights the need for Catholics to really know our faith and the reasons for why the church teaches what it does, and the ability to articulate it too. Because it's not enough when people come to us and ask, well, why does the church teach about contraception? It's not enough for us just to say, well, because it's just wrong. That's not enough. We need to know our faith, and we need to be able to articulate it, because souls are at stake, and there are people out there who really are hungry for truth and are willing to make that change.
Right. And the truth is compelling if you're exposed to it.
Yeah.
But you have to be exposed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to briefly mention two other stories just because they're so refreshing.
Oh, yes,
just by title. Hemlines and necklines is one, and ditching bikinis is another. And it's just, what's so refreshing to me about both of them is that they're both written by university students. I think one of them specifies even a public university, and that for these young women to have been embracing modesty as a virtue that they strive for, I just found refreshing.
That is refreshing. You don't hear a lot of that among the youth today. Now, I sometimes post on modesty, from my experience, they tend to generate the most heat, especially among Catholic women. Catholic women seem to have the strongest opinions about this. What sort of feedback have you generated?
Oh, well, one of the posts hasn't gotten a lot of feedback. The other one has gotten quite a few comments. One kind of questioning her, like, "Hey, dude should cover up as well." But most of them just very supportive of her. And then someone else in the comments. I tell you, the comments are just as enlightening as the stories. Someone posted in the comments a video about the history of the bathing suit.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, that's a good one.
And that was, I mean, in general, people are positive. So that's great.
Yeah. So obviously the authors are all anonymous for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Now, what if there were women out there who had compelling testimonies and stories that they wanted to share on your website? How would they get in touch with you?
They would go to www.conversationwithwomen.org, and there's a contact us tab there, and there's also a submit your story tag. You could also just Google conversation with women, and it would bring you there.
Great. So would you say overall you've gotten pretty positive feedback from your website?
Overall, yes. Mostly, a real common in the com box there, the prevalent comment is "Thank you for sharing your story." It's reading the comment. I think it's amazing to see how comforting it is to people, or how encouraging to realize they're not alone, and that there's someone else who's going through the very same thing, or at least a very similar thing.
Yeah, I think it is probably very consoling for women because, there are women out there, there are Catholic women out there who, for instance, have had to go through the pain of divorce or something like that, who've suffered from pornography in their marriage or abortion in the past, and maybe they're too ashamed to talk about it. They don't know who to talk to about it, and they can go to this website, and there are anonymous women out there who are willing to talk very openly and honestly about their own struggles with this. And I imagine it would be very consoling and comforting for these women.
And that's one of the main reasons that it is anonymous, is we want to encourage women to share deeply, as though they were confiding in their best friend. We don't all have best friends who are practicing Catholics, and if we don't have the opportunity to share deeply and to ask very personal questions of other Catholics, we're isolated.
Yeah.
And in the absence of these friendships, I mean, if we're left with the mainstream media, we're left to believe that there's not anybody out there even practicing Catholicism.
Exactly. That's one of the great things about the internet today. I mean, a lot of people use it for evil, but there are a lot of people using it for good as well, which is the way it really should be used. And one of the nice things, too, is that if you don't have friends within your own physical location, you get on the internet and you can find a good community of people there who are like-minded and devout and who can help support you in your walk.
Yeah.
So again, could you tell our listeners where they can find your website online?
www.conversationwithwomen.org.
Wonderful. And again, I want to recommend it to all my listeners. Again, it's not your average Catholic women's website. It's really interesting. It's got powerful stories, and it really is worth taking a look at and, recommend it to your friends as well.
I wanted to just ask people to please visit the website, read the stories, comment on the stories, share the stories with your sisters, mothers, and daughters, and let the stories be the kindling for face-to-face conversations with the important people in your life. And also, please prayerfully consider submitting your own story, because there's someone out there that needs your inspiration.
So conversationwithwomen.org. I've been speaking with Emily Borman, so I appreciate your taking the time to talk with me, and best of luck with your website.
Thank you, Christine.
Signing off, I'm Christine Niles of Forward Boldly Radio. Remember that you can find all our archived shows at forwardboldly.com. Thank you for listening, my friends, and in the words of Saint Joan of Arc, in God's name, forward boldly.